Let us learn how to configure Spring Scheduler using XML configuration. So look at this XML file. First of all, what we have to do is that you have to use schema task. Okay, these two, you have to configure these two URL for the schema. And one more thing, you have to configure this line XML ns:task and this URL. So this was the first requirement, and then we can use this element task:scheduler. So what we have to do is that first create a class, and suppose I have a class and it has three methods: fetch data 1 in the class book app, fetch data 2, and the third is fetch data 3. What I am doing is that two method I will configure using XML configuration, and one method I will configure using annotation. So I have these three methods: fetch data 1, fetch data 2, and fetch data 3. I am logging just their method name. Now come to the XML file. We have to use task scheduler element and define an ID here, and also configure the pool size. Okay, now use task schedule the tasks, and it needs a property. It has a attribute scheduler, and you have to refer the same name that has been configured here. The ID task scheduler you have to specify here to the scheduler attribute. Okay, and inside this task schedule the tasks, inside this element use task scheduled. This is for how many methods you have. Suppose for the method fetch data 1, what will I do that? First I will create a bean for that class. Suppose the bean ID is book app. So come to the task scheduled, refer it using ref. This bean I have referred it. Now use the method. Which method do I have to run? I have to run the fetch data 1. It is a method name in book app class. Okay, in the same way, if we have one more method fetch data 2, so we have to again create this element and refer the book and specify the method name. Now let's understand what are other attributes to schedule it. Suppose the first one is the cron. We can use the cron attribute. What will it do? A cron based trigger. This will use cron based trigger. Second is fixed delay, an interval based trigger where the interval is measured from the completion time of the previous task. Keep it in mind. Completion time of the previous task, and unit will be the milliseconds. Okay. This one is the fixed rate, an interval based trigger where the interval is measured from the start time of the previous task. The difference is this one fixed delay measured from the completion time of the previous task, and fixed rate is measured from the start time of the previous task. This is the difference. This is the initial delay, number of milliseconds to delay before the first execution of fixed rate or fixed delay. Means if I am using fixed rate or fixed delay, then we can use initial delay also, and that will just delay before the first execution. In the same way, trigger, a reference to a bean that implements the trigger interface. Here I am using fixed rate, and I am using 2000 milliseconds. It means 2 seconds. After every 2 seconds, fetch data 1 method will execute, and fetch data 2 will execute after every 3 seconds. In this way, what we will see that fetch data 1 and fetch data 2 will be scheduled, I have one more. If I want to use scheduled annotation, then what we can do is that we can use the JavaConfig and configure there. And if I'm using XML configuration, then we can use task annotation driven element. And what we have to do is that here again specify this ID, task scheduler ID, to the scheduler attribute of task annotation driven. In this way, this line will enable to use at the rate schedule annotation. Here I am using fixed rate as 1000 millisecond means 1 second. So by using this configuration, now I can use both annotation based as well as XML based. So I'm using at the schedule annotation as well as I'm configuring my methods using task scheduled tasks element in XML configuration. Let's run it. One more thing, if I am using Java config as well as XML configuration, though then in that case, in our in Java config, we can import that resource using @import resource. Okay, and in this way we will be able to use Java config as well as XML configuration. Now I have a Spring Boot application. I will just start the application and do nothing. We can see that these methods has been scheduled according to their given time. Okay, thank you.